everyone for coming. Obviously, it's been a tremendous loss. The Klal Yisrael, Tira of Mashiach, of Matisyahu, Salomon, Zatzal, someone who's touched so many people, tens and tens and tens of thousands of Talmidim, that he's had a tremendous impact on. And Hashgachas Hashem has arranged that a close Talmud of the Mashiach Punkt is here in Hollywood at this time, Rabbi Yaakov, who will be sharing with us Ma'asim memories and limudim from the Mashiach. In a moment, I'll just share very quickly one view of the Mashiach from my little winkel, from my corner. There was a big scandal a number of years ago. The Olam might have heard about it in Kashrus, not this week here. It was a big scandal. A number of years ago, the Muncie meat scandal. It's called chicken. And obviously, it sent shockwaves through everybody, but especially through the Olam HaKashrus. The Kashrus professionals were very much deeply affected by it. At the next ACO convention, the shiloh was who's going to address the Olam about this Inyan that was a big blow, a big black stain on the whole thing. So they brought the Mashgiach out. They brought the Mashgiach out to discuss with the Olam what the proper machshav, the proper mahalach forward is. And he started off, I just listened to it now, they sent it out again, amazing. He spoke about the danger of losing confidence in the system and confidence in ourselves as kashrus professionals. He spoke about how the focus should be, Ma zeh asa lokim lanu. What did Hashem do to us? Why did He do this? What can we learn from this? And the goal is to come out of this with our head higher, with a limudim, understanding what happened and making things better, but not approaching it in a dejected way, and oh my gosh, like, what are we worth now? But a very, very, very positive 5 minutes of positivity. And then he said that I don't know anyone here personally, and I don't know all the hashgachas well. So what I'm going to say now is just based on my observations in a very shitchius manner, and he really laid it on very, very thick. The Musar was very, very sharp, confronting Musar to the Olam HaKashrus, but in such a sweet way, that with that hakdama of the chizuk, and in the sweet way of saying penetrating ideas that were very confronting, and it was this kabel alev every single person that was there. That was my exposure, one of my exposures to the Mashgiach, and it's an amazing way of being able to affect people and change people in a very profound way. So it's a schus for us to hear from Rabbi Sipper, as we said, the close Talmud of the Mashgiach, his memories, his thoughts, and some limudim from the Mashgiach.
And others. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to say Divrei Hespid for my very beloved Rabbi, Matisyahu. I'm sure you'll all appreciate and understand that one drasha that cannot be well prepared, and one doesn't have time to prepare it, is a Hespid. I found out, my Ari told me, shared it with me last night, and this morning the Rav asked me. I had a couple of hours today, so I'm just going to share a perspective which I hopefully will be of some benefit and te'eles to the tzibur. When Eliyahu Novi went up to Shemayim, Elisha, his Talmud, stood and shouted, very well known pasuk, Elisha roya v'hu metzayek, Ovi, Ovi, my father, my father. It was the middle of battle, Rechev Yisrael uproshov, who is equivalent to horse and chariot in battle. And Chazal learned from here, Ovi, Ovi, that there's a double, there is a mutual, reciprocated relationship between Rebbe and Talmidim, like a father and a son. So, Ovi, Ovi, because it was a Rebbe. But the question I'd like to ask is, that why does Elisha speak in the singular when he's speaking on behalf of Klal Yisrael? Eliyahu is the God Ladoyer, and Eliyahu has just left Klal Yisrael. So he should have said was, Avinu, Avinu, our father, because Eliyahu is the father of all of Klal Yisrael. Possibly one may suggest that the Navi is teaching us that a real Rebbe is someone who may have countless thousands or tens of thousands of Talmidim, but each one of the Talmidim feels that he is a Ben Yochid, as if he is the only Talmid. And this is what Elisha is expressing, Avi, that he was a loving Rebbe, that he would have a personal kesher with him. That was all part of what he lost. To take this further, Chazal tell us the double expression, Avi. And Chazal say, Aviv ve'imoi. What does that mean? It means that a true Rebbe is not only a father, he's a mother. Typically, a father is concerned about the spiritual welfare of a child, whilst the mother is concerned about the emotional and physical welfare of a child. And Elisha, when he wants to explain what his Rebbe meant to him, his Rebbe was a father, his Rebbe was a mother. Matisyahu was that type of Rebbe. That each one of his Talmidim, I can only talk about the early years in Gateshead, I don't know him, I don't know of what happened when he came to America. He was the Rebbe. We all felt like literally like a Ben Yochid to him. He was always available to give us encouragement, direction, always seemed to have the time to patiently answer our shaylas. He was the shoulder that at that time anybody in England or Europe would cry on when they went through various difficult periods in their life. He was with us to rejoice at our simchas and comfort us in the way that he knew how to comfort in the difficult times. To put us straight at times and give us personalized mussar. Personalized mussar, which I must say I received on several occasions, but it was given with love and it was given with the affection of a father, and that's why it was accepted. His home was always open to those who required his guidance or brachas, or simply a listening ear. I think it's important to mention as well that behind every great man is a great woman. And if we're giving a Hespid for Rabbi Matisyahu, it'd be nice to mention his Eishes Chayil, the Rebbitzin. Anybody and everybody in Europe, definitely, I'm sure in America, remembers calling up and hearing Mrs. Salomon, the Rebbitzin Salomon, answering the phone. Salomon, hey, what can I help you? And I asked her once, you're getting so many calls. Why are you answering the phone? And she said, my husband and I have decided that if we have other people answering our phone, they may decide themselves which calls to put through. And we are here for everybody. And therefore, I'm not allowing, however hard, even when she was very ill, she said, my husband has asked me to do this because I want anybody and everybody to be able to, because he considered Klal Yisrael as his children. I once asked him, and I said to him, Rabbi, how do you cope? You're listening. People call you up on an average day with literally all the tzaras, all types of tzaras imaginable. One cannot begin to imagine, but anybody who's involved in Rabbanus knows what type of phone calls one gets. All the horror stories, all the crisis, everything comes to him. So I said to him, Rabbi, can I ask you a question? How do you cope with it? If you internalize all of these calls and you put yourself into that situation, how can you continue functioning? Yeah, it's impossible. So what do you do? And if you close your emotions and you listen on what we would call an academic level without your heart, then how can you help them? So tell me, how do you handle that? He was silent for a moment. I think he liked the question. And then he responded like this. He said, I want to tell you something. I struggle with that every single day. And what I do is, when somebody calls me, when I stop and I close my eyes and I put myself momentarily into that person's situation. I try to understand their pain, the density, the intensity, the volume of their pain for a short time. I'm able to feel for them. I'm able to advise them, to guide them, to daven for them, and then I close up my emotions because I cannot. It's impossible for me to live with that. That's what I do, and I actually believe that when he got older, he wasn't able to do that anymore. I explain what that means. I read recently Rabbi Shapiro at Shishabi Gesund brings down a story that somebody once took an Avreich into Matisyahu on a Friday night, and his Avreich had just been diagnosed with a very serious illness, and during the week he met somebody and said, I've got such charota, such regret that I took this person on a Friday night. I said, why do you have a regret? And he said, because the family told me afterwards that when Matisyahu heard this, he was so broken that he literally did not eat anything for the Friday night meal. He could not put food into his mouth until after Shabbos. In other words, the gevura that it took, the natural, what I'm trying to say is, the natural midah of Matisyahu was to feel and to put himself into it without limits. When he was younger, he was able to control to control the limits of how much it affected him. And when he got older, he wasn't able to anymore. And I think that's why very much he wasn't able to see people. Our obligation this evening, during the Yemei Avelis, is to try as much as possible to quantify and articulate the tremendous loss to Klal Yisrael. That's what the Hespid is about. What have we lost? The Pasuk says in Mishlei, "V'tzadik yisoid olam," and the Chazal explain what's it mean. Yisoid olam means that tzadik is the foundation of the world, and Chazal tell us that we have to understand and we have to believe that sometimes there may be few tzaddikim on whose shoulders the world continues standing. And even Bizman HaGolus, it could be the mitzvahs and ma'asim tovim of tzaddikim, and in their schus, the world has a kiyum. It's a very beautiful story. Going back to pre-World War II, when Reb Chaim Oisek Rajinsky, Zechet Tzaddik Livracha, was the unchallenged leader of Klal Yisrael in Vilna, in Lithuania, and a representative from Eretz Yisrael went to ask several shaylas. I think one of the Blaus went to ask several shaylas. And after business was done, so to speak, then Reb Chaim Oisek said to his Gaboim, take him around and show him the sights of Vilna. Okay? So they took him to the Vilna Gaon's Keva. They took him to the Keva of Avram ben Avram. They took him to the archives and showed him the fascinating files. And he came back, and Reb Chaim Oisek said, tell me, did you show him the crown jewels of Vilna? He said, what are you referring to? He said, in the base of Medrash, there's a Yid there who Klal Yisrael don't even know about yet. But you have no idea what he's doing to the world. His name is Avram Yishaya Karelitz, later on known as the Chazon Ish. And at that time he wasn't even known at all. What does that mean? Reb Chaim Oisek was teaching at that time that the mere presence in the world, even if a Godel, one doesn't know about a Godel, but the mere presence in the world of such a tzaddik, number one, creates an atmosphere, generates kedusha. It's like a powerhouse of kedusha to entire Klal Yisrael. And if chas v'sholom is a shas sakona, it's a time when HaKadosh Baruch Hu judges Klal Yisrael, and Hashem weighs up the merits of Klal Yisrael, then as long as the tzaddik is still in this world, his merits can add and can weigh the scales down in favor. The moment that tzadik leaves the world, we've lost that tremendous opportunity we had while the tzaddik was alive. I think it's very appropriate because Matisyahu has been unwell for many, many years. He's been unwell, he's been unavailable, unwell. He has been off the public. He has not. I don't think, definitely not on many occasions, he hasn't appeared publicly. But one has to understand what we've lost. Even if he was lying at home, but his very presence in the world, his Ma'irei Chusim, benefited Klal Yisrael to a degree that we can never imagine. The Kedusha that came from such a tzaddik with such chusim in the world, who knows how much it has helped. It had helped us, our children, and everyone else. Let's give a mashal for that. A mashal to understand the loss of a tzaddik. For those who know a little bit about England, in a place called the Tower of London, that's the home of the crown jewels. Coming back to the crown jewels. Home of the crown jewels, that's where they're kept. Now, imagine the Tower of London would be infiltrated by some gangsters who would steal the state crown and all the other royal artifacts. Now, I guarantee you that the vast majority of the people in England and the British Empire and around the world have never seen these jewels. But would they be stolen? If they would be stolen, it would be a national tragedy. It would be an irreplaceable loss. And it's because part of the pride and joy of the British Empire is this unique collection of crown jewels. It would be a loss for posterity. And this is how we feel today. We have lost a Godel. We have lost a giant in Torah, a giant in Chesed, a giant in leading and guiding Klal Yisrael. Guiding Klal Yisrael. We all knew him as the Mashgiach, the foremost speaker for many years at all our Agudah conventions and Torah Messiah, where at times it was necessary, and when it was necessary, he stood up fearlessly, giving over his undiluted perspective, his Ashkafas HaTorah. He was the general that stood up bravely at the beginning with little support to protect Klal Yisrael when he perceived and he saw that there was a tsunami of Tumah which was about to destroy Klal Yisrael and threaten to drown and obliterate Kedushas Yisrael through advancements in technology. He used to tell us that he once sat on a plane next to a professor of a university, and the professor said, "I've studied Jewish history right through the generations, and I stand with such respect and awe how you rose from the ashes, how it's possible for a nation to have been so beaten and so oppressed as the Jewish people were in the Holocaust, and yet today you're flourishing." But then he said to Matisyahu, "I want to tell you something. I'm telling you something, and I want you to listen to me." He says, "Yes, you may have survived the Holocaust, but you will not survive the spiritual Holocaust brought about," I'm saying this carefully, "by the improper use of technology." And Matisyahu would say to us with a smile, "The professor got the first part right, but he's undermining Wasser Zayid. He doesn't realize the inherent powers that we have, to stand up in every generation to every challenge. Yes, it may be difficult, and we may confront difficult and awful things, but he says that professor doesn't understand. My job," he said, "is to show Klal Yisrael and to bring out of Klal Yisrael the koiches that they have inherently lying inside them." He stood up bravely. He stood up bravely and said what had to be said and did what had to be done, as the Morada Asra mentioned earlier, with the kavur of a lion. And that's why he was so beloved, because he had that beautiful combination. It was Avi Avi. He was a father and a mother, and everybody knew it. Everybody knew that at any Rachmana litzlan, at any Shas Tzara, when there was something which a family could not handle emotionally, Matisyahu was the number to call. And Matisyahu would patiently listen. He would listen, and they would call again and again, and he would put people back on their feet. And he was as compassionate, the father and mother of Klal Yisrael. But yet, on the other hand, which is not a contradiction, because it works so beautifully together, he was the Rechev Yisrael U'Peroshov. He was this powerful general when he had to, and he would stand up like a roaring lion. But once again, everyone understood he's doing it to protect us. He's doing it to protect us. If there's an Avi Avi, then it's possible to be the Rechev Yisrael U'Peroshov. Allow me to share with you the first thought that came to mind when I heard the devastating news of the Patira. It's well known that he was hovering between life and death for many, many months, and against all predictions of doctors, continued to live until the neshama went to the Ginzei Meroimim, went to Shemayim yesterday. I opened up a Chumash. This week's Parsha is Shemos. We know that on Sunday, it's accepted practice that one learns Chumash. For the week, we learn until Sheni. On Monday, until Shlishi. On Tuesday, it's between Shlishi and Rabbi. So let's have a look. Yesterday was Tuesday, the Patira. What was the Parsha of that day? Vayehi bayomim ahem. And it took place at that time. Vayigdal Moshe. And Moshe grew. Moshe grew to greatness. And how did he grow to greatness? But through Vayetze el Echov, because he was somebody who went out to his brothers. Says Rashi, Nosan Einov Liboy. Nosan Einov Liboy. He was somebody who paid attention. He looked. He gave away his eyes. He gave away his heart. Lios Meitz Aleim. And Matisyahu would ask, I heard this from him countless times, why is this the way that the Torah introduces Moshe Rabbeinu? Moshe Rabbeinu was the Mekabel HaTorah, was the Adoin HaNaviim, the one that spoke pair and pair with the Shekhinah. So that's it. So what are you saying about him? That he saw people in trouble and he went to help them. Is that the introduction? And he explained that it appears that the foundation of greatness lies in this midah of Noise Ba'oil, the precondition of being a future Mekabel HaTorah, Manig Yisrael, Av Neviim. All depends on the level that he was able to be the quintessent Noise Ba'oil. There's a beautiful thought I heard once from the Mashgiach of Ponevezh, Reb Chaim Friedlander Zechatz Livracha. And he says, what's the big deal? It says that he saw the Yidden suffering and he went out to help. Wouldn't we do the same? Wouldn't anybody in this hall here today do the same? The Yidden are suffering. And he said a beautiful pshat. He said like this. He said, let's imagine Moshe Rabbeinu was in the palace of Paris where he grew up. And he opens up the royal curtains, looks out the window. And he looks down and he sees 600,000 Yidden, both men and women. Both men, double that over, women, doing slave labor. And he thinks to himself, can I help? Impossible to help. I can't help them. How can I help 600,000? How can I help 1 million with the women as well? 1,200, 12,000. It's impossible. What can I do? Give a kretz and move on. But Moshe Rabbeinu went out to help. Why? So he said a beautiful concept. He said, imagine as he's looking out the window, somebody walks past. And that person who walks past happens to be Moshe's brother, Moshe's nephew, Moshe's cousin, Moshe's uncle. So he forgets everything else. He runs out. His uncle is there. He's going to go and help him. And he says that was the gadlus of Moshe. The pasuk says, "Vayigdal Moshe, vayetze el Echov." He went out because he didn't see a crowd of Yidden. He saw brothers. These are my brothers in pain. If it's my brothers in pain, I'm going to go there and help them. But it's much deeper than that. I want to explain what this mid of Neisa Ba'oil is. If this is the foundation of Moshe Rabbeinu, and this is the foundation, let's explain what this is. Rav Pam writes, in his writings, he writes that to the credit of Klal Yisrael, we've never ever seen such organized kindness. The amount of gemachim, and every single kehillas outdo each other in the amount of chesed, the volume of chesed, the variety of chesed, the myriad ideas of all types of chasadim, for chaylim, for chasanim, for elderly people, for newborn babies, for everything. It's an unbelievable chesed. But Rapam said something like that. It's wonderful, and one may never undermine it. But, he says, chesed is not, we have to realize it's something much more than that. It's not sufficient just to do chesed. It's not sufficient to do acts of chesed. We have to learn to feel for another person. What's missing is noise ba'oil, putting yourself in. So you can have chesed. You can have chesed. It's a wonderful thing, but it can be a technical action. It can be even commercialized. This is what we do. We provide. But a feel. What does that mean? A feel. So Rabbi Yerucham explains. Matisyahu would always say this over. Rabbi Yerucham explained, why did Moshe put his shoulder underneath? What was the motivation for that? What was he trying to achieve? So on a very simple level, if you have a Yid here who's carrying a rock on his back which weighs 60 kilos, it's a crushing weight. So if you share the weight, it's 30-30. It makes it easier. That's noisei ba'oil im chaver. That's the Pashup Pshat. But it's much deeper than that. When you see somebody with a rock on his back, a slave, doing slave labor, so you're seeing it, and you think you understand it. You don't understand it. You don't really understand it. You're seeing it, and you may even, on an academic level, you understand it, but you don't really understand it. But when you put your shoulder underneath, and now you've got 30 kilos on your back, and all of a sudden, there's a shooting pain up and down your spine, and your legs, every muscle in your body is being stretched, and this rock is rough, and it's rubbing on your skin, and it's irritating the skin, and you suddenly feel wounds coming, and you think it's that means that you are actually beginning to actually feel the pain of another person. Moshe Rabbeinu was not happy just to see it. He wanted to experience it firsthand. Rabbi Yerucham writes that somebody once came to him and said to him, "Tell me, how many times do you turn over in bed at night?" So that's an interesting question. He said, I went to visit a chayla. And Nebuch, this poor chayla, is partially paralyzed, and he cannot move in bed. He needs a carer to come in ever so often and move his position that he shouldn't get bed sores. And I was trying, and when I was there, I thought I understood what the person's going through. And then I lay in bed that night, and I thought to myself, I'm going to count how many times do I turn over? How many times do I turn the pillow over? How many times do I maneuver myself until I'm finally in a comfortable position? And this poor man, the carer, comes in, puts him in a thing, and comes back an hour later. And there he is, having to endure the difficulties. Noisa ba'oil. It's a beautiful concept, and something we have to learn. Noisa ba'oil, all of us, or every Yid, we all have hearts, and we hear something, we give a krechts, oi nebach, nebach. I saw a book somewhere, somebody said if I would write a book, it would be called, And What Happens After the Krechts. You all give a sigh for somebody else, but it's learning to cultivate that feeling. So let's come back. I think we can now understand why, so Matisyahu would explain to us, why the Torah introduces Moshe with that mid of Neisa Ba'oil. A Manig Yisrael, somebody who's going to be destined to become a leader of Klal Yisrael, has to care for the physical welfare of Klal Yisrael. He has to feel their pain and understand what they're going through. There was a Rosh Hashiva called Rav Koppelman, from Litzen. In a beautiful vort he said, why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu say to Moshe the first thing, remove your shoes? He said in Yiddish, I'll say it in Yiddish because you appreciate Yiddish now, I'll say it in English afterwards. When you take your shoes off, you feel the stones underneath. And he says somebody who's a future manig b'Yisrael has to learn to feel the pain, feel the stones in other people's life. Only a manig who has shown that deep level of care and concern, who can put his shoulder underneath to feel the pain as if it's his own pain, to be able to empathize, sympathize, encourage, comfort the suffering people. Only such a person who views even a stranger as a brother, that person, first and foremost, is able to daven for other people. It's able to daven. If somebody hasn't got a midah of Neisa Ba'oil, our Gedolim have this beautiful midah of Neisa Ba'oil, and that's why I can testify firsthand how Matisyahu felt, and therefore how he davened, and the way he davened, and the way he put himself into tefillas, and the way he put himself into getting other people to daven for somebody. He had that tremendous feeling. Daven, as Moshe Rabbeinu did, to save them at the Egel, the Meraglim. The one who cares, to borrow a phrase from a Moshe Shera, the one who cares for Rebbe Yisrael can one day be a leader of Klal Yisrael. And that is very, very much why Neisa Ba'oil is the foundation. Somebody who's there to fight the cause of Klal Yisrael, defend them against all the makatrigim that are coming to persecute us. And therefore when he gave Teichacha and Musa, when he gave rebuke, it was accepted with the love. Not always, but generally it was accepted with the love with which it was given. Because Klal Yisrael realizes ultimately how much he loves, and therefore it's for their sake. Now we heard this from countless times, that this is the beginning, this is the foundations of any great person. And I believe, and I'm not sure if it's been said yet, but I think it definitely has to be said, that it's no coincidence that this Pasha, which was read, which was learned yesterday, coincides with the Petira of Matisyahu. Because very often, when a Gadol dies, we see the Gadol, we see the greatness. There'll be many books brought out about him, and we'll think to ourselves, it's impossible for us to reach it. It's impossible for us. I remember once saying to my Talmidas in Sem that Reb Shach was far taller than the Twin Towers. What do you mean he's taller? He said, so I said simply, I think the Twin Towers had 110 stories. There's far more than 110 stories about Reb Shach. So Gedolim, the more one hears about them, the bigger and bigger they are. And we think to ourselves, yes, so what does it have to us? We can't connect. Matisyahu was wow, he was a giant, but I'm a dwarf. So Matisyahu was nifta on the Pasha of Vayigdal Moshe Lecha to show us that every single one of us can create that beautiful midah. That's the foundation, and that's where it starts. And I think this As we said, this was the mid of Neisa Ba'oil, which built him. They're going to be the stories. There are so many stories. We're not here tonight to tell the stories. The stories will be read. But let's give one example. This one, which touched me at the time very much. When he moved to Lakewood, there was a family living close to him that Nebuch went through an unglück. They lost a father or a mother just before Matisyahu made a chasna. And now Matisyahu, with all the tears of Klal Yisrael, all the tears of the yeshiva, all the tears of making a chasna, the night before the chasna calls the caterer and says to the caterer, I'd like you to do the following. That family can't come to the chasna because they're aveilim. I want you to go to the house and I want you to lay out the table there exactly the same as you'd lay up a table at the chasna, with the same tablecloths, the same floral arrangement, the same cutlery, and I want you to have a waiter there to serve them. I will only be able to enjoy the chasana knowing that these poor Yisayimim are being mishtatev in their way. Now that's beautiful. That's a gem. That's nicer ba'oil. That's a feeling as if my close brother or sister can't be there. And that's what prompted him, I believe, to stretch himself beyond his physical kaiches. And he told me on many occasions, I can't do it. I can't really do it. I don't have the strength. But I'm being asked from all over America and Canada to come and address, whether it's men, women, children. So I said to him, Rebbe, so why do you do it? There's other people to do it. And he modestly said to me, but they say to me that if I do it, it'll be a little more chizuk. How can I say no to them? And if he pushed himself, we all know how tiring it is to travel, and when one has a busy program. And I believe that's it's the same midah. It's the same midah of Neisa Ba'oil that prompted him. Besides, it means when he left Europe, everyone kept a connection with him. So here you've got Europe, which is all over Europe, we're calling Matisyahu. He comes to America, and he's got America. And I heard then that they offered him to become the Nasi, the president, the leader of the whole organization for the chizuk of Russian Jews, which would mean going there many times. I was sure he would refuse. It's impossible, but he didn't. And some of the most gorgeous pictures of Matisyahu connecting with these Russian children. Connecting, you see the smiles, as if he was going out there. That's Neisa Ba'oil. It was the middle of Neisa Ba'oil that kept his door open literally 24 hours a day. His phone would always be answered to anybody and everybody, any time of the day. And finally, his deep concern for the future of Klal Yisrael that prompted him to spearhead the campaign that led to the massive gathering at City Field, to give over the Torah perspective about the correct usage. But it all started with his achieving gadlus in this mid of Neisa Ba'oil. As it says with Moshe Rabbeinu, I think it's true to say about our beloved Rabbi. And one final thought. Matisyahu would always tell us that in Pasha Shemois, the Sheitrei Yisrael, that means the Jewish overseers, Paroi appointed Jewish overseers to make sure that the Yidden did what they had to do. And at the end, when Paroi stopped providing the straw and they had to find it themselves, they weren't able to come up with the required amounts. So they came along and said, either you tell us which Jews have fallen short, or we whip you. And what they did was they bared their backs and they say, these are our brothers and sisters. There's no way we're going to tell you. Whip us instead. Whip us instead. And Matisyahu would always say over from his beloved Rebbe Rebellia, why did Kodesh Baruch Hu do that? He tells Moshe the Geula is coming, and then they go through that suffering. And the Mashgiach would say such a beautiful pshat. He would say the Geulas Mitzrayim was close. But yet, it required Klal Yisrael to move up one step. just to raise themselves to one level higher in Noisa Ba'oil, to feel the pain, to be prepared to take a whipping on your back to enter another Yid, and that activated the Geula. The Mashgiach was deathly ill, Pesach time, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu kept him miraculously alive until yesterday. I have a feeling that what he did in his lifetime, he will continue doing now in Shemayim. We all know that we're living in extraordinary times. October the 7th triggered off an unprecedented positive response from Klal Yisrael all over the world. Tfilis, financial help, people giving out their apartments, people from America, from Europe, going to Eretz Yisrael to do whatever had to be done, to be prepared to do. Talented singers, entertainers going to give chizuk. Almost every single age group in every congregation is involved in some way. Klal Yisrael has become united and unified. Political and social barriers have come down or breaking up, and Klal Yisrael is ba'achdus. And I believe, and I'm sure we all believe, that Matisyahu with his ayin yafa, he will be the shliach tzibur. He will go up to Shemayim and say to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is there still anybody here in Shemayim who says that we have machlekes amongst us? Is there anybody here in Shemayim who dares to say that Klal Yisrael isn't ba'achdus? Okay, I'm going to tell them. I'm coming from a world filled with chesed, filled with rachamim, filled with compassion, filled with noisa ba'oil. That's where I'm coming from. And a Matisyahu like Moshe Rabbeinu, who stood there against all the prosecutors of Klal Yisrael, we're sure that the Matisyahu, Be'ez Hashem, will do that. And let me just conclude with a story. Amazing, amazing story. I think it's the most amazing story, an unusual story. My wife and I, Sunday evening, went through the passport control in Miami Beach. And we come through, there's a huge queue behind us, it's New Year's Eve. And the man there stops, and of course the regular questions, why are you coming, where are you coming to, all the normal questions, which of course you answer very carefully. And then he looks at me and says, what's happening in Britain at the moment, England? So I said, it's wet and cold. I don't want to get into any political discussion. And he says to me, no, I mean the protests. I don't know whose side he's on. If I say something, I may be thrown out. So he says to me, the protests, they're terrible, aren't they? So very cautiously I said, yeah, not very nice. And then he went on, and then he said to me, you know something? He said, my grandmother spoke Yiddish. My grandmother spoke Yiddish. So I said, really? So I said, what do you remember about Yiddishkeit? He said, only two things. When I was a child, all I knew was that I was hated because I was Jewish. My friends called me Žid, and they got hold of me whenever they could and took me into the bathroom and turned me upside down. And that's all my memories of being Jewish. I know nothing else. I said to him, tell me, I said to him, this at the passport, as we're going through the passport, I said, can you say Krishma? Can you say Shema Yisrael? He says, I know what Hashem means, and Hashem Elokeinu, but I don't know, I've never said Krishma. What is Krishma? So I said to him like this, I'm holding a passport in my hand, 2 passports. I cannot come into America unless I have these passports. Correct? He said, absolutely, I'm not going to let you come in. Because I want you to know something. In the eternal world, there's also a passport control. And if you want to get through there, you have to say a Shema. Let's say it together. He says, okay, deal. What do I do? So I said to him, put your right hand over your eyes. And he does so. I said, let's say this together. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. And he said, thank you very much. And I said, you know what, I'll write it down for you. I didn't say it every day. And I said, if you ever have a worrying moment, say it, and you'll see very likely that you'll feel better afterwards. That was our conversation, and I went away. And I thought to myself, there's an amazing lesson here. Here's a man, I would imagine his mid-50s, doesn't know what Krishma is, at the passport control, and yet, in a moment of truth, He's able to do something which is life-changing, something which may have been against everything he stood for, but in a moment of truth, a person can raise himself up. When a tzadik is nifta, Chazal tell us it's a moment of truth. Malachim come down to pick up. There's a kedusha in the world at the moment. We're not able to see it. It's not tangible. It's not something we can see it, but it's there. And Matisyahu would always say to us, I remember hearing this from him time and time again, that this is an opportunity we have there's certain things in our life that we would like to change, would like to grow, and we don't have that ability, we don't have the inner courage. And he would always say to us, utilize this opportunity when a tzaddik dies. Let's do it. If the man at the customs, who's never at the passport control, in a moment he can lift up his hands and say a Shema, which is Kabbalas Oil Malchus Shemaim. Let each and every one of us be Mekabel Oil Malchus Shemaim in the area that it needs. And to conclude, if it's a moment of truth, let's undertake to train our families to emulate that beautiful midah of Neisa Ba'oil. Let's start with our own families, wider families, giving them time, support. Sometimes families are going through financial difficulties. Think about them. Think about them. Feel how hard it must be. You can't pay bills. Let's train our families not to speak negatively about other individuals or communities. Teach them they're our brothers. Let's train our families to develop an ayin tova towards others. We may not agree, but we may never dislike. To love every Yid. Let's stop negative, critical comments. Let's elevate ourselves to a level that when we say Acheinu Kol Beis Yisrael, it's genuine. We genuinely feel that way, and it has built foundations of Ben Adam Lechaveirei as the Mashgiach did all his life. And may this lead to the time of Bila Hamavas Lo Netzach. Means HaKadosh Baruch Hu will take away death from the world. U'macha Hashem dima me'al kol panim. May we all be zeicha only to see the Yeshuas Hashem, Be'ez Hashem Yisparach, with the coming of Mashiach Tzidkenu Me'er of Yameinu.
Amen.